she froze in place. On the other side of the glass, just inches away, two small brown eyes blinked back at her. The bear cub wasn't snarling. It wasn't breaking in. It was simply peeking. The snow had turned the world into silence. Each flake that fell felt like a blade, slicing against his skin, even through the layers of wet, heavy clothing clinging to his body. His breath came shallow, rattling, each exhale crystallizing in the air before vanishing into nothing. He had been walking for hours, maybe days. Time had lost meaning. All that mattered was the cold. The endless, merciless cold. His legs gave out first. They simply folded beneath him, dumping him into the snow with a dull thud. The shock of it stole what little air he had left. His fingers clawed weakly at the ground, but they barely responded anymore. Numbness had replaced pain. And he knew enough to understand what that meant. He was freezing to death. The forest stretched silent around him, dark pines bowing under heavy drifts of snow. No sound of human voices. No sign of fire. No hope of rescue. A broken laugh scraped out of his throat, carried away by the wind. He thought of all the warnings he had ignored, how quickly a storm could turn, how cruel the wilderness could be if you entered it unprepared. Now, it seemed, he was paying the price. His eyelids drooped. He wanted to close them, just for a moment. Just to rest. But deep down, he knew, if he let them fall, they would never open again. Then, a sound. Crunch. Heavy. Deliberate. Snow shifted behind him. His sluggish mind fought to register it. Footsteps. Too heavy for a man. Too steady for the wind. He forced his eyes open, head turning weakly. And his blood froze colder than the snow beneath him. A bear. Massive, hulking, its fur dusted with frost, its dark eyes glinting in the pale light of the storm. It stood only yards away, its breath pluming in the freezing air. His heart lurched painfully in his chest. Instinct screamed at him to run, but his body was useless. He couldn't move. Couldn't fight. Couldn't even raise a hand. So this was it. Not the cold, but the bear. His life ending in silence, torn apart in the snow. The bear lowered its head. Sniffed the air. And then, it stepped closer. The man's breath caught, chest burning. He shut his eyes tight, waiting for the strike. But it didn't come. Instead, the snow shifted again, the weight of the animal lowering itself down beside him. Heat radiated like a furnace against his frozen skin, its massive body pressing into his own. He gasped, shock piercing through the fog in his brain. The bear wasn't killing him. It was lying next to him. And with each second, the warmth spread, pushing back the death creeping through his veins. But why? Why would a creature that should see him as prey choose to save him instead? The man realizes the bear is not attacking, it's keeping him alive. David's heartbeat pounded in his ears as the forest seemed to close in around him. The mist hung heavier now, settling on wet leaves and twisted branches, each droplet catching the faint, filtered light like tiny, trembling prisms. The bear remained immovable, standing solidly on the trail, muscles coiled, eyes unwavering. David could feel the sheer weight of its presence pressing down on him, a primal force, indifferent to human expectations, yet intensely aware of every step, every movement. He took another cautious step backward, trying to maintain space without turning his back. The cub shuffled further behind its parent, small paws slipping on moss-covered rocks. David felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. The bear wasn't advancing, but neither was it retreating. The realization sank into him that his every action had to be precise, deliberate, and calm. Nature had its rules, and he was merely a participant in a game governed by instincts far older and more honed than his own. He spoke again, voice low, almost trembling. "I'm leaving. I won't hurt you or the cub." His words were met with silence, only the faint rush of the river and the occasional drip of water from leaves. The bear's eyes remained fixed on him, head slightly tilted, nostrils flaring as it assessed him. David felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had prepared for bears in theory, but now that he faced one directly, the theory melted into raw, palpable fear. A sudden movement in the undergrowth to his left made him freeze. A branch snapped under the weight of some unseen animal, and both his and the bear's attention shifted instantly. The cub whined softly, flattening its ears. David realized with a jolt that he was not the only living presence being evaluated by the bear. Its instincts were tuned to protect, to anticipate, to react. One wrong move, one sudden sound, and the delicate balance could shatter in an instant. David's mind raced. He could see the contours of the bear's body, the immense shoulders, thick neck, massive paws pressed into the damp earth. It was perfectly still, yet every muscle seemed ready to spring into motion. The cub pressed closer, tiny claws gripping the moss and debris beneath it, while the bear's massive paw hovered protectively over the small body. It was a standoff, yes, but more than that, it was a display of intelligence, patience, and primal calculation. David knew he had to retreat slowly, giving the bear room while keeping the cub in his peripheral vision. He shifted his weight cautiously, each movement deliberate, heart hammering. He took a deep breath and whispered again, "I'm going. I promise. I'm leaving." The bear's ears twitched, her breath fogged the air as she stared at the shape lying in the snow. Her hands shook, both from the cold and the gnawing in her stomach, as she crouched down, brushing away the powder that clung to it. It was a carcass. Small, a hare, stiff and frozen, but fresh. Its fur still thick, its body intact. Her throat tightened, eyes stinging. Food. Real food. She glanced up at the bear, heart hammering. It stood a few feet away, watching her with dark, steady eyes. Its chest rose and fell, clouds of vapor curling into the storm. It didn't move toward the rabbit. It didn't lunge, or try to reclaim it. It had brought it to her. Her lips parted, but no words came. She didn't know if it was possible, if bears could understand need, or hunger, or mercy. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe she was only imagining some bond because her mind was fraying with starvation. But the hare was there. Her hands trembled as she picked it up, the cold biting through her skin. She had no fire, no way to cook it properly, but right now, raw survival outweighed everything else. Still, she hesitated. Her eyes lifted again. The bear was still watching. Its head tilted slightly, snow clinging to its muzzle. "Why?" she whispered, voice breaking. The bear gave no answer. Just a slow blink. Her stomach twisted violently, tearing away the last of her hesitation. She sank down against the tree again, knife fumbling in her hand as she prepared the carcass with shaking fingers. The first bite made her gag. It was cold, metallic, bitter on her tongue. But once she swallowed, something inside her snapped, the desperate, animal instinct to survive taking over. She ate until her body wouldn't let her anymore, until warmth spread through her chest, faint but real. When it was done, she leaned back, wiping her mouth with her sleeve, heart still pounding. The bear hadn't moved. Her breath caught. Was it waiting for something? Was it only feeding her so it could keep her alive for later? The thought sent a shiver colder than the wind racing down her spine. But then the bear huffed, turning away. It lumbered a few steps into the storm and stopped. Its massive head swung back toward her, as if checking to see if she followed. Her pulse hammered. It wanted her to move. The wind howled like a living thing, lashing her cheeks with shards of ice. Every step felt like wading through a sea of white. She pulled her coat tighter around her body, a useless gesture, the cold already buried in her bones. And yet, she followed. The bear's hulking figure moved steadily ahead, massive paws pressing deep tracks into the snow. Tracks she used like a lifeline, planting her boots inside them, forcing her legs to keep going. Every so often, the bear turned its head, eyes glinting through the storm. Not once did it growl or charge. Not once did it vanish into the trees. Always, it stayed just ahead, as though tethering her to the present, to motion, to survival. Her thoughts whirled as fiercely as the wind. Why hadn't it killed her when she gave it the bread? Why bring her the hare? Why guide her now? It made no sense. She staggered, knees buckling, and for a moment she fell to her hands in the snow, gasping. The cold bit into her palms, the sting nearly unbearable. She half expected the bear to turn then, to strike, to finish her off. Instead, it stopped. It stood a few yards ahead, waiting, its massive body steady against the gale. It didn't move until she forced herself back onto her feet. Her chest heaved. You won't leave me, will you?" The words disappeared into the storm, unheard. But saying them out loud gave her a strange strength, thin as a thread but just enough to keep her moving. The forest thickened as they pushed deeper, trees leaning close, their branches sagging heavy with snow. The storm screamed through them, tearing loose flakes and needles, showering the ground in white. Hours blurred into a cruel rhythm, follow the tracks, stumble, rise again. Always, the bear was there, carving the path, never closer than a few feet, never farther than she could see. And then? The trees parted. Her breath caught in her throat as the land dipped ahead, a hollow in the forest floor. And within it, half hidden by snow and branches, rose a dark shape. A cave. The bear trudged down into the hollow without hesitation, its body disappearing into the shadows inside. She froze at the ridge. Her chest burned with terror. If she followed, there would be no escape. It could be a shelter or a trap. Her legs trembled, every instinct screaming at her to run. But there was nowhere else. Nowhere but the storm. And the storm would kill her faster than the bear ever could. She swallowed, heart hammering, eyes fixed on the black mouth of the cave. Her next step would decide everything. The clearing exploded into chaos. The first wolf scrambled back, its yelp echoing as it limped into the storm. But the others didn't scatter. They surged forward together, dark shapes breaking from the tree-lean, teeth glinting white against the night. The man's chest seized with terror. He clawed weakly at the snow, his body screaming at him to move, to do something, but he was too weak, too broken. All he could do was watch. The bear met them head-on. Its roar shook the forest, rattling through the storm like thunder. Snow flew in sheets as it swung a massive paw, catching one wolf mid-leap and slamming it into the ground with a sickening thud. Another darted in from the side, snapping at its flank, but the bear twisted, jaws flashing, and clamped down on the attacker's shoulder. The wolf howled, writhing before tearing free, blood painting the snow. The man's breath came in short, panicked bursts. His mind screamed at him to look away, but he couldn't. The violence was brutal, raw, terrifying, yet something inside him stirred. Awe, gratitude, even hope. But the wolves weren't giving up. They circled, their movements coordinated, patient, clever. One darted close, snapping at the bear's legs. Another lunged from behind, teeth grazing its thick fur. The bear bellowed in rage, spinning, striking, but the pack was relentless. The man realized with a sinking dread, the wolves weren't only testing the bear. They were herding, drawing it away. And if they succeeded, if they pulled the bear from his side, he wouldn't last minutes alone. His pulse hammered in his ears. He tried to shout, but his voice cracked, swallowed by the storm. He tried to move, dragging himself an inch across the snow, his limbs like stone. "Don't leave me, don't leave me." The bear seemed to hear him. Even as it fought, it kept circling back, never straying too far from where the man lay. Each time a wolf lunged closer to him, the bear wheeled, snarling, driving it back with sweeping claws. It was fighting two battles, survival and protection. The man's throat tightened. The fear didn't vanish, but something heavier replaced it. The realization that this wild creature, this beast of the forest, was choosing again and again to stand between him and death. But the wolves weren't finished. A new howl rose from the trees, deeper, louder, commanding. The pack leader. The man's blood froze as he saw it, larger, darker, eyes burning hotter than the rest. It padded into the clearing, teeth bared, growl rumbling low. The other wolves fell back slightly, as if making room. The leader lowered its head, and the storm seemed to pause. Then it charged. The alpha wolf has entered the fight, and the storm is about to decide who survives the night. The air in the cave felt colder when she opened her eyes. Her neck ached from sleeping against stone, her body stiff and trembling. At first, she thought it was just the storm that woke her, the wind still howling through the forest. But then she saw them. Shadows moving at the mouth of the cave. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She blinked hard, forcing her vision into focus. Figures loomed in the snow, not the massive bulk of the bear, but leaner, quicker shapes. They moved in packs, slinking low, their eyes catching faint glimmers of light. Wolves. Her blood ran cold. She pressed back into the wall, holding her breath. There were 3, no, 4, circling just beyond the entrance. Their paws crunched softly in the snow, ears pricked forward, noses twitching. They smelled her. Her throat closed as one padded closer, slipping into the shadow of the cave. Its lips curled, teeth flashing white in the dim light. A low growl rumbled from its chest, echoing against the stone. Panic clawed up her throat. She reached instinctively for her knife, fingers trembling so violently she almost dropped it. But a single knife against 4 wolves? Hopeless. The growl deepened. Another wolf slipped in behind the first, hackles bristling, eyes locked on her. The others paced outside, tails flicking, waiting. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts. The walls felt like they were closing in, the storm outside sealing her fate. And then? A sound shook the cave. A roar. It erupted from the shadows deeper inside, so deep and powerful the stone itself seemed to vibrate. The wolves froze. The sound came again, deafening, primal, the kind of sound that lived in their blood and told them to run. The woman's chest seized as a massive shape surged forward from the darkness. The bear. Its bulk filled the cave, fur bristling, teeth bared. It charged with a fury that sent the first wolf yelping backward, tail tucked. The others scattered, snapping once before vanishing into the snow, their howls fading into the storm. Silence slammed back down. The woman pressed against the wall, knife still clutched in her shaking hand, eyes wide. The bear turned, chest heaving, breath rolling in clouds. Its eyes flicked to her, steady, piercing, before it lowered its head in a huff, almost dismissive, and settled back toward the center of the cave. Her body wouldn't move. She sat frozen, caught between terror and awe. It hadn't killed her. It had defended her. The wolves are driven off, but the woman realizes the bear is not just sparing her, it is protecting her. The clearing shrank around him. Every glowing eye felt closer now, every snarl louder, sharper, cutting through the scream of the storm. The bear stood bloodied but unyielding, its flank heaving, snow-matted red at its shoulder. It snarled at the wolves, sweeping its massive head side to side, daring them forward. The alpha circled, limping but unbroken, its gaze burning with rage. Then the wolves shifted. The man saw it, the subtle change in their formation. Their steps no longer angled only toward the bear. A pair broke off, padding low and silent, their eyes fixed on him. His chest seized. He clutched the branch tighter, splinters digging into his frozen skin. "No, stay back," his voice cracked, too weak to command anything. The wolves didn't hesitate. One lunged. The man swung wildly, his muscles screaming. The branch cracked against the wolf's snout with a hollow snap. It yelped, staggering back, but the second was already on him. Its teeth snapped inches from his arm as he scrambled backward in the snow, his heart hammering in his throat. He screamed, thrashing, the branch shattering in his hands. The wolf's hot breath hit his face as its jaws clamped down, but it never reached him. The bear hit like an avalanche. With a roar that rattled the night, it barreled past him, colliding with the wolf mid-lunge. Snow exploded in a white cloud as the beast slammed into the ground. The bear's paw came down hard, pinning the predator, crushing it against the frozen earth. The man's ears rang with the sound, half from terror, half from sheer disbelief. The bear had left the alpha to protect him. The pinned wolf writhed, snarling and snapping, but the bear ended its struggle with a brutal swipe. Silence fell for a heartbeat, broken only by the storm and the man's ragged breaths. Then the rest of the pack howled. The alpha's voice rose above them all, furious, commanding. The circle tightened again, glowing eyes flickering closer through the snow. The man's pulse hammered. He had nothing left, no weapon, no strength, no plan. Only the bear stood between him and the ring of teeth and hunger. But the bear was bleeding. Its breaths came shorter now, each growl rougher, its massive frame shuddering with exhaustion. And still, it stood over him. Guarding. The man's vision blurred with tears he hadn't expected. Not from fear this time. From something deeper. Don't give up on me," he whispered, his voice breaking. The bear growled low, as if answering. The storm howled louder. The wolves crept closer. The alpha crouched, ready to strike again. The man braced for the end. And then, from somewhere deep in the forest, another sound cut through the night. Not a wolf. Not a bear. Something else. The bear has chosen to protect the man over its own fight with the alpha, but now a new sound in the forest threatens to change everything. The bear's paws landed heavily on the cobblestones, each step deliberate, dragging the weight of silence with him. His head lowered slightly, his breath pushing white puffs into the cold night air. The apples lay forgotten behind him, scattered in broken crates, juice soaking into the dirt. But his eyes weren't on the fruit anymore. They were fixed on the small hand pressed against the glass. The boy's breath fogged the window as he leaned forward, his eyes wide but unblinking. His palm stayed where it was, trembling only slightly. The librarian reached to pull him back, but her grip hesitated. Something in the child's stillness, in the way he held himself, froze her arm. The bear approached slowly, his massive frame illuminated now and again by the shifting glow of a lantern outside. His fur rippled in the half-light, coarse strands catching the silver of the moon. His steps echoed against the walls, a deep rhythm that made the villagers' hearts pound in unison. "He's coming closer," the farmer hissed, clutching the lantern so tightly that the iron handle burned into his skin. "We need to act." "No sudden moves," the librarian whispered sharply, her eyes locked on the bear. "If we frighten him now," she didn't finish. The bear reached the base of the library wall. His claws scraped faintly against the stone as he shifted his weight, tilting his head. His nose brushed the glass where the boy's palm rested. The sound was shockingly soft, a faint tap, followed by the fog of his breath blooming across the pane. The boy's chest rose quickly, but he didn't move. He whispered, barely audible, "He's not angry." The librarian's pulse thundered in her ears. She couldn't decide if it was madness or instinct that kept the boy frozen there. But the bear didn't growl. He didn't slam his weight into the wall. Instead, he pressed his muzzle gently against the window, as though testing the barrier between them. From outside, the villagers shifted nervously. One of the older men raised a pitchfork, but the farmer snapped at him in a low growl. "Put it down." "No." The air was too thin, too fragile for steel. Inside, the boy slowly lifted his other hand, placing both palms against the glass. The bear's breath misted the pane, each exhale deep and steady, each inhale pulling the boy's scent into his searching nose. For a long, unbearable moment, nothing moved but the drifting steam between them. Then the bear made a sound. Not a growl, not a roar, but a low, rumbling huff, almost like a sigh. His ears flicked back, and he shifted his weight again, pressing closer to the glass. The pane creaked faintly under the heat and moisture of his breath. The librarian finally found her voice. "Step back," she urged the boy, though even as she said it, her tone lacked conviction. Something in her chest told her this was no act of aggression. This was something else entirely, something she couldn't explain. The boy shook his head slightly, his eyes never leaving the bear's. "He's just looking." But the moment's quiet shattered with the sudden squeak of a loose cartwheel. Someone in the square had shifted nervously, pushing their cart too close against the stones. The sound rang sharp in the silence. The bear's head snapped toward it. His ears shot forward, body tensing like a coiled spring. His muscles rippled as his claws dug into the stone at the light. David's muscles tensed as the sudden splash from upstream reverberated through the forest, echoing off the mossy trunks and river rocks. The bear's ears swiveled sharply, nostrils flaring as it assessed the source. The cub pressed instinctively closer to its parent, claws digging into the damp soil. David froze, his heart pounding, aware that the tension he had felt for hours was now peaking. Every fiber of his being screamed for caution. One misstep could unravel the delicate balance that had been painstakingly maintained. Through the swirling mist, he glimpsed a disturbance in the water, a large salmon caught in the river's rapid current, struggling against the force of the swollen river. The bear's stance shifted instantly, muscles coiled, massive shoulders rippling under thick fur, eyes locked on the prey. The cub squeaked softly, mirroring the parent's focus and awareness. David realized he was witnessing a crucial life-and-death moment, the culmination of hours of observation, patience, and instinct. He inched backward slowly, careful to maintain his footing on the slippery moss-covered incline. The bear's gaze flicked briefly toward him, amber eyes assessing, but it quickly returned to the river. Its paws pressed firmly into the wet soil, leaving deep impressions, each movement deliberate, precise. The cub mirrored the parent, small paws gripping moss and roots, muscles tensed in anticipation. David's pulse quickened as he watched the adult bear prepare to act, understanding that this was a moment of raw, unfiltered natural behavior. The salmon thrashed violently, water splashing across the bear's paws. The adult remained poised, balancing instinct with calculation. It leaned forward slightly, a massive paw reaching out, but not recklessly, not with aggression, merely to corral the fish toward calmer water. The cub watched intently, amber eyes wide, learning from the adult's measured response. David's breath caught. He was witnessing intelligence, patience, and precision, a rare glimpse into the mind of a wild predator acting with awareness and restraint. The river churned, currents swirling around rocks and submerged logs. David's focus sharpened as he tracked the bear's every movement. The adult nudged the salmon gently, redirecting its path toward a slower eddy where the cub could observe without danger. The cub squeaked, ears flicked forward, and claws gripped the soil tightly. David exhaled slowly, heart pounding. The bear's actions were deliberate, grounded in natural instinct, yet exhibiting a level of intelligence and problem-solving that transcended mere predation. He shifted slightly, careful not to startle the pair. Mist curled around. The forest stretched endlessly around her, a vast world of white silence broken only by the crunch of her boots and the heavy prints of the bear leading her forward. For hours, she followed. The cold bit at her skin, but the fire inside her was different now. She wasn't stumbling blindly anymore. She wasn't waiting for death in a frozen cave. She was moving because of him. At times, she faltered, her legs weak from exhaustion. Each time, the bear paused, waiting until she found the strength to continue. His slow, steady pace seemed made for her, not for the wilderness that he owned. Then, just when she thought she couldn't take another step, the trees opened. Her breath caught. Smoke. Thin trails rose in the distance, curling into the pale sky. And beneath them, shapes. Cabins. A settlement. Her knees nearly buckled. Home. People. Safety. The bear stopped at the tree line. His massive body was framed against the snow, his head turning slightly as if to watch her reaction. She choked on a sob, tears stinging her frozen skin. She turned to him, words tumbling, broken but desperate. You brought me back." He stood still, silent, his breath clouding in the cold. For a heartbeat, she thought he might move closer, might let her reach out, to touch the creature who had spared her, defended her, fed her, and now delivered her to life. But instead, he turned. Without a sound, he padded back into the trees, his massive form swallowed by the forest, leaving only deep prints in the snow behind. Her heart wrenched. She wanted to call out, to stop him, to thank him, but her voice broke into the wind. She stood there, staring after him until the last flicker of his shadow vanished into the wilderness. Then she turned toward the cabins. Toward life. The villagers rushed to meet her when they saw her staggering from the trees, their hands pulling her close, wrapping her in warmth, voices tumbling over one another with shock and relief. But even as she let herself collapse into their arms, part of her remained with the bear. The wild, impossible companion who had asked nothing, yet given her everything. Later, as she sat by a roaring fire inside the safety of the cabin, a steaming bowl of broth in her hands, her mind returned to him. his eyes in the firelight, his roar that scattered wolves, his silent gift of a hare. And above all, the simple truth. She had given him her last food, expecting death. And in return, he had given her life. She looked out the frosted window into the endless white of the forest beyond, and whispered softly, almost like a prayer, "Thank you." She gave up her last piece of food to a starving bear, and in return, he gave her survival. Sometimes, the most unexpected bonds are the ones that save us. What would you have done if you were in her place? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more true survival stories like this one.